I'm Chaplain Jacob Scott of the Oregon National Guard. This is the Hope in the Trenches podcast. Where going forward, I'll sit down for conversations with people who offer interesting and informative perspectives on finding strength for life and work in the trenches, and even improving our spiritual posture. Whether you feel like you're under heavy bombardment or ready to go over the top toward a new objective, it's good to be with you. Life is replete with challenges, and our guest today has encountered his fair share, particularly when his life was dramatically changed by an IED blast in Afghanistan. Our guest today is Jed Morgan. Jed was a corporal in the U.S. Marine Corps who sustained life-changing injuries during his service in Afghanistan. On June 21st, 2012, while deployed to Sangin in Helmand Province, he was critically injured in an IED explosion that resulted in the loss of both legs above the knee and the use of his right hand. Despite these challenges, Jed's determination and positive outlook have led him to become a passionate advocate for fellow veterans and first responders. Beyond his personal recovery, Jed has dedicated himself to helping others heal through nature-based therapies. And we'll talk a little bit about ecotherapy too. He collaborates with the White Heart Foundation, organizing ecotherapy retreats that include activities like whitewater rafting, rock climbing, and equine therapy. These retreats aim to foster camaraderie and healing among veterans and first responders experiencing post-traumatic stress and trauma. Jed and his family currently reside in beautiful Southern Oregon, where they're active in their church and community. Our producer again today is First Sergeant Zach Holden, a public affairs specialist for the Oregon Guard and the 115th Mobile Public Affairs Detachment. It's been a while since we've recorded, so thanks, Zach, for being here today. Jed, thanks so much for joining us today on Hope in the Trenches.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation. Now, we'll start us off with a little bit of your origin story. So, first, how did you join up, and when did you become interested in serving in the military?
Let's see. Growing up, I always wanted to serve in some capacity, whether it was military or first responder. And as I got older, went to high school, and my high school, they had the recruiters come, they put their tables up, and we would talk about, what it would be like to join the Marine Corps or the
Mm-hmm.
Army or Air Force and all that. And at that time I was in Colorado Springs, so Air Force Academy is pretty big there.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to challenge myself in some way. But I got out of high school, I worked for about a year, and I just knew that I needed to do something more. I wanted to give back in some way, and so I looked into first the Army, took the ASVAB with the Army, and I just still felt like, this doesn't feel like the right way to go. Like I want to probably try something a little bit more, try the Marine Corps. That was just a draw for me, and maybe it's something the Lord put on my heart.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I ended up going to the recruiter of the Marine Corps and talked to them and got everything switched over and started doing that whole process. And at first I was going to go in as just military police,
Mm-hmm.
but I would have to wait back in the States or back in Colorado for probably close to a year before they had an opening for that specific job. And so I was like, okay, I'll just stay here. I'll do the training with the recruiters and work on my fitness and that kind of thing in the meantime. But then probably a month or so later, I got a call from the recruiter and said, hey, I've got an opening for infantry if you're interested. So I was like, all right, well, I'll talk to my parents, I'll pray over it and get back to you. And I just felt like, yeah, this sounds like a good way to go. I was pretty excited about it and had a piece about it. So called them up and said, all right, let's do it. So that was kind of the direction I ended up going.
Oh, good. Now, did you have any family members who were Marines or any other service members in your family?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I can't recall any family members at all that have served. So
Was it the commercials that got you interested in the Marine Corps?
I think so. Yeah. The swords, the fancy suit, killing a dragon.
Oh yeah, they're really good. They're really good at marketing. I almost Well, enlisting in the Marine Corps was one of the options that was on the table, but obviously I went Army a little over
Yeah.
27 years ago and haven't looked back.
Yeah.
So, what year was that, and when did you join?
So I joined in 2009. Yeah, so I went to MCRD in San Diego.
San Diego. Okay, yeah,
So yeah,
the West Coast. What do you remember about standing on the yellow footprints?
I remember being pretty scared, nervous at first. Yeah, first time having somebody in my face screaming at you, and yeah, pretty uncomfortable. You're already tired at that point, and then yeah, definitely an interesting experience for me.
I had a similar kind of welcome to the Army moment. I was 19 years old. I was at airborne school, and he could this crusty old I think it was an E8. He could or sergeant major, but he could probably see it on my face. And he stopped in front of. We were filling out paperwork, and he stopped in front of the desk, and he said, "Son, where you're from, they don't yell at you enough." And but yeah, I think we've all seen videos of the shark attacks in the Marine Corps and in the Army. Well,
Oh
so
yeah.
so you got there, and so that was basic training. What are some things that you remember from the first part of your career, or was there anything that you particularly enjoyed about that phase?
Mm. Definitely not. I didn't really enjoy the boot camp at all phase. It was good though. I mean, it built confidence that I didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
Helped me physically. I was a pretty just scrawny, skinny, weak-looking kid growing up, and going through boot camp helped me gain some strength and then just the confidence, knowing that okay, I can do a lot more than I thought that I could.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into infantry school, I think that was a lot more fun. You're a Marine at that point.
Yeah.
You're somewhat more accepted. I mean, you've got instructors still yelling at you, but a little bit more respect, and you've got weekends off and that kind of thing. But you're starting to actually learn about your job. You're learning your weapon systems. You're training for the job that you're actually supposed to be doing. So it's that part I enjoyed a lot more. Had a number of really good friends that I've been able to keep in touch with even to this
Oh,
day, and a
good.
number of them that ended up we all went together to the same unit and stayed together for the remainder of my time in the Marine Corps. So
Oh, that's cool, and I'll probably ask you about that in a little bit when we talk about what you're doing now. But
sure.
so, well, reflecting back on that time, was there anything that you wish you had known going into it, or something that you might share with a young person who's on the fence about joining the military?
I yeah, I don't think there's anything that I wish I had known. I mean, I prepared myself as much as I could. I think having the culture shock is necessary, um, and I think you know, it'd be odd if you didn't have some sort of shock to your system going into it. And I think that's the whole point of boot camp. You know, getting you used to, especially war. If you're going in the
Mm-hmm.
infantry, that's something you should be preparing yourself for. Um, but yeah, I think somebody that might be on the fence to join. Yeah, I think really look deeply at is your desire to really like serve your country. Are you really looking to better yourself as a person and push yourself past limits that you haven't pushed before? Those sorts of questions I would probably ask. Yeah, I know a number of people that have joined just simply they want the free college,
Right.
and that's okay. But I think we really need the folks that are looking to serve their country because they believe in what this country stands for, and they have a desire to keep those freedoms and fight for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are some things that I would really question young folks today thinking about joining. What really is your draw and desire for joining?
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are great questions. Well, and so you enlisted in 2009. I joined a pre 9/11 military, so things were a lot different. And so I'm always incredibly grateful for people like you and a lot of our young people today who joined the military after 9/11, because we were in 2009. I mean, that was the surge, right? Around the surge time in Afghanistan, we were we were starting to wind down, I think, in Iraq the first time, but um, like you mentioned, we if you joined the military then, you were probably going to go to war at some point.
Mm. Yeah, it's true.
No, that's incredibly profound, and no, and I'm still very grateful for young people and people like yourself that joined the military when we were already in the middle of those wars.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so then tell us. So you finished basic training in the School of Infantry. Then what was your first assignment like, and take us up to 2012.
Sure. I think you go through boot camp, and at least for me, I was thinking, oh man, this has got to be the hardest thing that you do. And then you go to infantry school, and maybe you're not yelled at as much, but physically and everything harder. And you're like, okay, this has got to be the hardest part about it. And then you get to your unit. At least for me, at that time, maybe it's changed now, but for me, it's obviously hazing was very discriminated on, but you had your senior guys who they'd already deployed to Iraq just a few months prior, and had, just come back, and so they're waiting to get out. They have no cares in the world about anything, and they are really excited when new guys come in to make their lives miserable.
Mm.
So then it was like, okay, that was a big shock to me. You're thinking, oh, I'm a Marine now, and all that. And you come to your unit, kind of a big shock there when you start having these guys who are supposed to be on the same team, but it doesn't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was difficult for me, trying to get through that period of time. You're trying to earn respect of your seniors and that kind of thing. But we started training shortly after I got to the unit to prepare ourselves. Initially, we were thinking we would be deployed to Afghanistan. So that was probably late 2009 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I figured we were potentially going to be going to Afghanistan. This unit had like I said, just returned from Iraq. So they ended up switching the orders around, and they were going to be deployed to Marine Expeditionary Unit instead. So I got stationed in 29 Palms, California, which sounds beautiful, but it's not. And with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, it's an infantry unit. And so we started training shortly after that for our Marine Expeditionary Unit. And we were part of a boat company, my platoon was. So that meant going over to Coronado Island and training with the Zodiacs and learning how to do beach raids and things like that. So that was actually a ton of fun. Had a great time, learning that skill, doing something very different. So that was our first deployment. We ended up going to Okinawa. We hopped on a naval ship there, and we floated around the Pacific. Had an opportunity to visit different parts of Japan, the Philippines, Singapore. So it was a pretty exciting, interesting experience for me. See places I've never seen before, and be able to train and do things I've never been able to do before. So it's actually a pretty fun deployment overall. And then we returned from that. At this point, my now wife, she and I were just dating at that point. So, I returned from this deployment in the Pacific, and, we start talking a little bit more seriously about our relationship, what is this going to look like. We get orders that our next deployment is going to be Afghanistan for sure. So we know that's going to happen. And then we start our workup for combat deployment. So completely different to what our first deployment workup looked like, obviously. And, being in 29 Palms, it actually was perfect. We had perfect backyard right there for combat deployment in the Middle East. So we were doing that. And then, as we neared our deployment date, which was in March of 2012, my wife and I, girlfriend at that point, we made the decision, we got engaged, and then made the decision to, rather than to wait till after deployment, to get married before. So we had a fairly short engagement, and we were married in December of 2011. And then, 3 months later was deployment to Afghanistan. And in between that, had about a month-long workup out in 29 Palms for our big desert, warfare training operation that they do out there. So she and I, we didn't get to see each other a whole lot after marriage. It was pretty short, and in between trainings and that kind of thing. So that brought us to March 2012, where we deployed to Afghanistan.
So now that there's more than, so this is more than 10 years ago now. What do you guys talk about when you reflect on that time before that deployment?
It was definitely a growing moment for us. It forced us, in our marriage, we knew from the beginning, obviously dated for a couple of years already while I was in the Marine Corps. So it wasn't new for me to be gone and that kind of work and everything. But I think just being thrust into, okay, we're married, which, I think was definitely a God thing that we ended up being married before, so that she could be with me in the hospital after injuries. So looking back on that, it was like, wow, that was something God definitely orchestrated, and we can see that clearly. But in the moment, it was just pretty stressful, pretty difficult. But it was great to be able to spend that time together, where she lived in 29 Palms with me for that short period of time. So we were able to spend some good quality time, which we hadn't before, which was really a blessing.
Sure. Yeah. No, I can see that. So then, tell us about deploying to Afghanistan.
Yeah. Let's see. We flew into, I think it was Kazakhstan first, and then or Kyrgyzstan. I always get them mixed up, but one of those countries right above Afghanistan there, and then from there flew into Camp Leatherneck, and then did a short, day or 2 day stay there, and then they took us in Blackhawks over to Sangin, Afghanistan. So this is patrol bases mainly. They had some old British / Russian patrol bases. So, and then they had a larger battalion base as well. But my platoon was sent to one of the smaller patrol bases at first. So we spent probably the first 2 months or so at this patrol base, and just from that place there, we took over from the other unit that was there prior to us. They showed us around the area, took us on patrols around, talked to us about the locals, showed us who gave good intel, who did not, who to look out for, what to look out for, those kind of things. And then from that point, it was just, our responsibility to patrol the areas, take care of the civilian population that was there. At that point, we were getting close to the drawdown phase of
Mm-hmm.
Afghanistan. And actually, our area in Sangin was scheduled while we were there to be completely turned over to the Afghanis. So that was something in the back of our mind, and we were kind of preparing for. But it wasn't invasion type of deployment, more of
Right.
peacekeeping, helping the locals, that kind of thing. But we did, at that point in March, very little fighting going on. We would still go in contact with IEDs here and there, and then some small arms fire, but pretty few and far between at that
Mm-hmm.
point. Within the next month, though, the weather started warming up. The poppy had already blossomed, and then they'd already harvested the poppy, so you could tell very, very different thing was happening. Like,
Fighting season, right?
yep, fighting season started, and it was almost like a line could be drawn. Like, once that poppy was harvested to when the fighting started, and IEDs were their favorite tool of choice. So I would say every patrol, we at least saw one IED that we had to mark and have EOD come out to, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely a big thing that we saw in our area.
I was in Afghanistan in 14, 15. We started off in Western Afghanistan, and so I did fly through Helmand Province a couple times, but they were well. So the big drawdown happened right at the end of 14, but they had already closed a lot of those smaller outposts by the time I got there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so then can you tell us about the time then when you were injured?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So we closed down our patrol base, full wad, and then we moved over to our larger base that was still there, with the entire battalion was stationed at. And so we started doing patrols out of this area, totally different area for us. And in June of 2012, we were conducting a foot patrol. We started off at the local Afghani police station that they had there. We were doing a patrol out of their base, and we were going up to an area that we'd been to probably a month or so earlier. So it'd been quite a while, but patrolled an area. We had some intel about the Taliban taking goods in and out of this specific area. It was behind hillside and had some buildings down below with a roadway where they would carry weapons in and out of, that kind of thing. So we wanted to go and check in on that intel. And there was an abandoned Russian outpost up at the top of this hill. And so we decided, let's go up to the top. We'll do some recon in the area, because it looked right down at this area we were interested in. So we get to the top. Obviously, we've got the folks doing the metal detectors in front of us, sweeping the area. It's kind of a bowl-shaped hillside, or hilltop, so we could get some good cover from the top while still, looking down below and having eyes on where we needed to. So we were all setting into place. I was a saw gunner, so a small machine gun, so obviously needed to be in a pretty good area in case we did have a firefight take place. So I was getting set up in one area. My team leader, he wanted me to pick up and move over to a different spot, which was a better avenue of fire for me. So I was getting up, walked over, had my buddy, he was getting his gear all set up to the right of me. And I remember putting my rifle down on the ground. I was kind of shimmying myself to lay down the prone behind it. And then I don't remember at what point it happened, but either I hit my foot or my knee, one of the two, on a pressure plate. I just remember waking up on my back, so I blacked out for a few seconds or so.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt at first like a I don't know if you had those dreams where you feel like you want to move, like you need to move, but for whatever reason your body won't move.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. And so at first I thought I had fallen asleep while on Overwatch, and I was like, man, how did I fall asleep that quickly? Like, there's no way I fell asleep that fast. And then the dust starts settling. My ears are just, I can't hear anything at this point. And then my buddy starts running over, putting a tourniquet on my leg. And then that's when I realized, like, oh man, I'm not sleeping. I hit an IED. And so I was able to lift my head up, and my left leg had been taken off immediately below the knee. And then my right leg was just shredded. And I didn't even realize or notice that my arm had been shredded up as well, my right arm. And some other injuries as well. But yeah, they started putting tourniquets on me. Corman, he came running over, started packing gauze into wounds and checking tourniquets and that kind of thing. They got the stretcher out, put me on it, and that was probably the worst part, was getting me on that stretcher. And finally that pain started to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel really a whole lot of pain at first. And then they started carrying me down the hill. There's an abandoned, cleared out poppy field down at the bottom. So they were calling in air to come and pick me up at that spot. So they carried me down, got me down the bottom, and they set up a cordon around me, waited for the helo to come in, and then they picked me up, and pretty quickly, thankfully, and then airlifted me over to Leatherneck or Bagram, the
Mm-hmm.
field hospital there. And then they got me, sedated and everything there, and started initial surgeries from what I know, but kind of went into induced coma at that point.
At Bagram? Yeah.
Yeah, Bagram. Yeah. 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 And then flew me over to Germany at some point. They ended up calling my wife and my parents and telling them, hey, your son's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. You need to come here and say goodbye. So they flew my parents and my wife out to Germany, and in the thoughts of, hey, he's going to die, time to say goodbye. This is your last chance. But they let me come in, my parents and wife go into the room, and I guess, I don't know, God had other plans, and ended up turning a corner. And within less than 24 hours, they said, hey, he's actually turning a corner. We think he's actually stable enough to fly. So they got me loaded up, and my family, wife, and I, we flew over to Walter Reed. So yeah, that was just a huge miracle there.
Absolutely. So had you suffered internal injuries as well? Or what was the extent of what they knew at that point?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I don't think nothing really internal too much. Yeah. I mean, I know that I had some stuff with my heart. They had to put a stent in, and with my lungs and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not sure the reason. I can't remember the reason why they were thinking I wasn't going to make it. My body was shutting down or something. But I had some brain trauma, so pooling my brain, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So have you talked to your wife and parents about that trip so your parents were in Colorado? Was your wife still at 29 Palms, and did they have to link up to fly to Germany to meet you? And I mean, did they fly commercial?
Yeah, thankfully they're all in Colorado Springs at this point.
Okay.
And my wife was actually living with my parents at that moment. So, yeah, and I think that they flew commercially over to Germany. Yeah.
I can only imagine how tough that that trip would have been.
Yeah.
So when, at what point did they take you out of that induced coma, and do you realize like where you were and that your family was with you?
They had me in it from at least what they say, about a month or so, close to a month in the induced
Okay.
coma. So I woke up and my parents and wife, they had no idea I had any recollection or knowledge of my injuries. So,
Hmm.
I wake up and my dad and wife are right next to me, and my dad's like, "Hey son, I don't know if you know this, but you've lost your legs." And I was like, "I know, Dad, I know." So I think that was a blessing that I was awake during that time. I knew what had happened.
Hmm.
I'd come to a peace about it. Like, Lord, if you take me now, so be it. But so it wasn't a huge shock to me as I can imagine it would be for some of the other guys who don't
Yeah.
have that opportunity. But yeah, it was definitely they had no idea. I knew, but yeah, it was a pretty tough thing I can imagine for my dad to have to say that not knowing.
Yeah, and to wrestle with that for a month while you're in that medically induced coma.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah,
be the and being a father now, I know that yeah, that'd be challenging.
right. Yeah, definitely.
So when you woke up, you were at Walter Reed. What was
Hmm.
what was your recovery like, and what was that process, and kind of along the way, what did you learn? What did you learn about yourself, and your relationships with your family and friends and others?
Mm.
And of course, leaning
Yeah,
on you talk very openly about leaning on your faith through this time too.
yeah, yeah. Walter Reed was mainly the place where I just did all the surgery. So
Hmm.
yeah, I was mainly in the hospital bed. They kept having to do revisions on my leg, so they ended up they tried to salvage my right leg. They couldn't do it. Too many infections. So I kept getting infections in my legs. So ended up having to take more and more. So it resulted in both legs being above the knee. And then my right arm, thankfully, they were able to save that. So a lot of surgeries. That was a big thing there. So pretty much every day, every couple of days, I'm going in for another surgery. So I know that was really difficult for my family and wife. Just not know, like, is this going to be the last one?
Hmm.
Is he going to wake up after the surgery? That kind of thing. For me, I was just high as a kite. But it was that was, I guess, the tough part was like not being able to have a whole lot of mental clarity. Just trying to live
Hmm.
through the pain as much as possible.
Hmm.
But having such an amazing family, my in-laws flew out. My parents stayed there. The entire time, or as much as they possibly could. They'd have to fly back home every now and then and whatnot. But my brother and sister came out, had a bunch of friends from that I knew from California, being stationed there. They were able to fly out. Some of the guys who actually got injured, they were shot or something like that overseas. They ended up being able to fly out, come see me. So I think that was just the biggest thing, was just seeing the amazing support that I was able to have, and just really blessed by that. But then it also just, I think, grew my faith quite a bit in that time. Um, when my buddies were carrying me down the hill to the airfield, my one friend, he was saying the Lord's Prayer to me and
Hmm.
helping to keep me awake and cognizant. And so he and I were reciting the Lord's Prayer on the way down. Um, and then, for them, it was pretty emotional. Like, we were extremely close.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys, one of them, I'd literally I'd known him from infantry school. So we'd known each other for a number of years. We trained together for years. We've done a deployment already together, so extremely close. So it was really emotional for them. And for me, I don't know, I just had a peace about what was happening. And I knew that, whatever did happen, it was God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my own plan. He had a reason for it. And I told them that. I was like, guys, like, God has a plan for this. Don't worry about me. Just focus on your job and make sure you guys keep each other safe. And
You
and
told that to
I
your buddies as you left Afghanistan.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
did you wrestle with that at all, or was that you were already like that was already understanding that? Well, there's a proverb that I share with soldiers and others in counseling pretty frequently, that the heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Was that something that was already kind of part of who you were before this happened, or did you have to wrestle with that acceptance?
No, I mean, that was part of, part of my just knowledge and faith in Christ, just knowing that, he had a plan for everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't something I had to wrestle with. I think it just put it into practice, during this whole time. And then being in the hospital, really being forced to either accept it or don't. It's either I could wallow in pity and feel sorry for myself, or I could allow the truth that I know from the Bible, from my faith in Christ, to actually play out in the way that I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was probably the biggest lesson that I was able to take away from that time in the hospital. I will say, after I had the opportunity about 3 months from being in Walter Reed to be able to go and fly to San Diego. So it was either I stay in Walter Reed, which I had no desire to stay on the East Coast, or I could go and fly to San Diego and be at the Balboa Naval Medical Center there.
Yeah.
Which I was like, yes, that'd be amazing. I could get there before my unit comes back from Afghanistan, have the opportunity to go and see them when they come home. And then also closer to Colorado Springs with my family.
Mm-hmm.
So made that transition, and then had a few surgeries here and there at that point, but was mainly there for rehab. So I had the opportunity to get into prosthetics and that whole thing. And then the big part was getting off of medication. So, not being high all the time and to numb that pain, like I could actually start thinking more clearly, which was great, except for the fact that I think it helped me to process things a little differently. The trauma and everything came on, full tilt.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before it was probably numbed a little bit, didn't have a proper way of processing that in my mind. It was just survival mode before. But now I was able to get, we had our own off-base housing, my wife and I, able to go out and do shopping or go places and do things again. And so that's when, try to go to church, and then, being in a crowd and freaked me out and I had to walk out, those kind of things where I had no idea what I still hadn't processed yet. So that time was actually really difficult because it shook my faith quite a bit, where I ended up having a moment where I was angry at God. Like I didn't want to have anything to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Lord, you know what? Like I am struggling every day. I can't even walk right now. I'm in a wheelchair or whatever it might be, or I'm falling all the time trying to walk, or I can't pick things up with my hand anymore. Like, can't do the day-to-day things I used to. And that's when that like realization, reality of what my life was going to be like started to hit me. And so I walked away from God for a while. Didn't want to have anything to do with him. Didn't go to church, or I'd go to church, but didn't want to be there. Didn't take anything in. But yeah, that was a pretty tough time for me personally, my relationship with Christ, and then just my marriage as well suffered from it.
Hmm.
Just became a very angry person at that point. So
Well, and seeing you now and hearing you now, when or what brought you around out of that that anger, and what helped you recover from the well, mentally, spiritually, from your injuries?
yeah, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it took a while. It wasn't until we moved from San Diego. I medically retired from the Marine Corps in 2014, and then shortly after we moved up here to Oregon. And I remember one day, um, my wife. I think my wife was maybe visiting family in Colorado, something like that. But I remember, at that point, I was just an angry guy. My wife and I fought all the time, yelling, screaming, slamming doors. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Hmm.
Um, and and I just had such bitterness and hate in my heart. I wouldn't show it outwardly to other people, but inwardly, I just, it was just boiling, um, and had no care for other people, no empathy.
Mm.
But I remember, one day specifically, yeah, my wife was out of town, and I remember just I was wheeling in my wheelchair into the bathroom, and they talk about the thing of like looking at yourself in the mirror or whatever, and and seeing your reflection, and I looked literally in the mirror in the bathroom and saw myself, and I just remember being so disgusted with what I
Mm.
saw, and I hated myself. Um, and at that, I broke down right there in front of the mirror, and I just called out to God, like, Lord, I need help. I don't want to be known to my wife as that. Well, he's just that angry husband. I don't want to be known to. At that point, I had one daughter. I don't want to be known to my daughter as, oh yeah, yeah, my dad loves me, but he's angry all the time. He's always yelling and fighting, you
Mhm.
know. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to be that person. But I don't know how to change myself. Like I need you to change. And that was the first time I've ever felt had like a miracle kind of moment where it was like a split second type of miracle. But like I mentioned, I had just anger and bitterness and lack of empathy. But I could literally feel in that moment God melting that away. And I could feel like love being poured into my life and heart.
Mm.
I can't really explain it other than a miracle, like, honestly. That's something I tell people is part of my testimony, like, because it is the only explanation that I can have and it was really difficult for my wife to wrestle with, because I went from this super angry guy to all of a sudden a loving, empathetic guy.
So she,
Yeah.
I mean, did you tell her what happened, or did she just notice when she got home that something was different?
I told her, but I think it was probably before that on a phone. She could mention, or she could notice, something was different.
Mm.
And then I told her about what had happened. But even still, she wrestled with that. Like, just like, do I trust this guy? Like, is he
Mm.
serious, or is like some ulterior motive going on? That kind of thing. Um, but yeah, that's the only way I can describe it, was a miracle. Like God totally changed my heart right there,
Mm-hmm.
um, and helped me to see, what I was doing to my family, and that I needed to, I needed to confess and re-put my faith back in Christ and
Mm.
allow Him to change my heart.
Well, and from your wife's perspective too, the human side of our relationships, um, especially one as intimate as marriage, we condition each other in how we communicate and behave toward one another. And so, I don't know what I don't know what year that was, but at that point now she'd only known, angry Jed for a couple of years at that point, right? And so um it's going to take a long time to sort of wear down those defenses that she had built up to protect herself from that anger and resentment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, man, that's a powerful testimony. And I always tell soldiers and families too. Yeah, I am an optimist when it comes to finding healing in relationships. That it is possible, especially with the vows that you've made to one another, and being able to live out those vows.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Have you so you with the months that you spent at Walter Reed, and then a couple of years, or almost 2 years down at Balboa, um, what were your relationships like with other wounded warriors or other service members who were going through that stuff?
Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities in Walter Reed, just the nature of what I had to go through there. Had a few times where other guys, that weren't as severely injured came in. Actually, one of the more influential moments of that time period was when a couple amputees came walking in with
Mm-hmm.
prosthetics into my room and telling me, hey, like, it sucks now, but look at this technology. Look at what we're able to do. You're going to be able to do what you did before, if not more, after once you get to a certain point. So
Mm.
that encouraged me a lot. Like seeing that there was still hope. That I could do things still. I wasn't going to be bound to a chair the rest of my life, or a bed or something. So that was pretty helpful. And then in San Diego, I had a much larger opportunity to be able to meet with other wounded veterans from all different branches, and they were just in a very similar stage of healing as I was. Some of them had been more advanced. Had one friend, specifically Andrew, he Navy EOD tech, triple amputee. He and I became really good friends. He lived right across the street from me. He was already in prosthetics quite a while before me, and it was just one of those guys that was just a go-getter.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't let anything keep him down. And he taught me a lot about how to walk and navigate different obstacles and prosthetics. And so really awesome guy, and helped me to be a part of different things, got me engaged with shooting competitions and things like that. So got me out doing things that I never had done before. And just, he really helped me a lot in that process.
Silly question. Do you have to shoot left-handed now?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
the most part, yep.
So yeah, I do. I just know because a lot of my friends would be curious about that. Would be curious about
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
So you use the word hope, which for me as a chaplain, that's kind of how I see my purpose in uniform. The importance of having hope. And you talk a lot about resilience now, and certainly your story is an incredible story of resilience. How do you define resilience? And did you think about that stuff before you were injured?
Mm. Yeah, I think I would define it as, um, yeah, I think I'd take probably a biblical approach to resiliency,
Mm-hmm.
in that, you know, the way I look at it right now is, if you obviously, not if you have faith in Christ, being able to see the negative situations in your life as opportunities for growth, and not seeing it as, God trying to kick you down, trying to make you suffer, punish you in some sort of way. I'd rather look at it as this is an opportunity to grow in some area of your life. And because it's very easy to take it as a punishment, or like, what did I do, Lord, to deserve this? But when we, look throughout Scripture, and we see that God used suffering all throughout the Bible, all throughout his people that he loved, to help them grow in a certain way. He's still doing that today. And it's helped me to be able to get through things that I've had to get through, process things, and look at it instead of, maybe cursing God, like Job's wife told Job to do. Instead, Job chose to praise God in that suffering, realizing that he had a plan in place and was doing it for a specific purpose. And that's helped me a lot with that process.
There's a great book by Dr. Angela Gorel, and I think it's The Gravity of Joy. And that's kind of her whole point is that, we can't escape suffering as humans, in without even going into that too deep theologically, right? But that joy and suffering aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Like, you can find joy even in the midst of difficult times. You can find growth after suffering trauma. And I'm a big fan of the work of Travis Mills, and I follow him a lot too. He calls those opportunities for recalibration, and how recalibration is a big part of that.
Yeah, that's great.
So so that's a big part of what you do now, helping others grow, in the midst of and after suffering something traumatic or suffering. So tell us a little bit more about what you do now.
Sure. So I work with a nonprofit called White Heart Foundation, and originally this whole opportunity started from an unfortunate circumstance. I had a number of Marines that I had served with after they got out of military or came back from deployment, took their lives. And while I was in Balboa, there was one Marine there who, I'd see through rehab, be able to meet with him, and didn't chat a whole lot with him during that time period, but we knew each other. We still went to formations and things like that together. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I had an opportunity to go to the SHOT Show convention in Las Vegas. And so when I was there, I saw this Marine. He was helping promote a specialized wheelchair that would enable people who with amputations and paralysis to be able to play golf and other activities. And so I went up and I said, hey, started chatting with him and asking him about what his life was like and what he's up to now. And man, he was just all smiles. He was talking about how he was helping promote this company. He was going to go and be part of the Paralympic shooting team and all this stuff. I mean, he was just really full of life, very excited for the future. So I fast forward a few months later, I'm doing a training event that I had an opportunity to do out in New Hampshire. And one night I get onto Facebook and I see that this Marine had taken his life. I heard from a mutual friend. And it happened that my friend Ryan from White Heart Foundation, who's the founder of White Heart, he and I knew each other because they had donated me a off-road wheelchair, and so we started, grew a relationship from that. And so I knew Ryan, and Ryan happened to know this same Marine because they were building this Marine a specialized wheelchair as well, an off-road wheelchair. And so he heard about it. because of that build. Somebody checking on Ryan saying, "Hey, how's this build going?" And he's like, "Oh, we're still in the process." And he's like, "Hey, don't even worry about it. This Marine took his life today." And so it's pretty wild that we both happen to know the same person in different ways, but it struck me more than I think other friends that had taken their lives because of the fact that just so recently I'd seen such joy and hope for the future in this young guy's life, and got to some point where he felt that taking his life would be the best option, and I couldn't figure out what would take that, what would drive somebody to get to that point. And I've been a part of a number of programs that the military had offered while I was there, different hunting trips and fishing trips and all this and that, but not a single one of them touched on mental health at all. It was just, let's give these folks a free trip, give them a bunch of free stuff, send them on their way. You never hear from them again. And I knew that there had to be some way that biologically and mentally and all that stuff that would truly help people that have gone through trauma like we had, and then help them to get to a point where they didn't feel that suicide was the option. And so I reached out to Ryan, having that previous relationship. He told me, "Hey, I know the same guy, like we were doing this." And he's like, we've been wanting to create some mental health program within our foundation, but we just have had nobody to run it. And so I told him, "I'll do it. Like, I'll be the guy." So we took a year of research. We looked into different studies on the brain, different, things that had been proven to help folks that have gone through trauma, like to actually help them to have healing within the brain after traumatic events. And so we put together what we called at that point the Guardian Project. We just call it the White Heart Foundation, because that's the sole focus of the program. And what it is we found just through our research that nature, as you probably are aware, is extremely healing. So just being outside, there's something that happens within our brains that helps us to heal. And many times, folks who have gone through trauma, they isolate. They don't get out. They don't do things. So getting folks outside in nature, in and of itself, is healing. Being around like-minded individuals who know what you've gone through, who have done similar things, who are suffering similar ways, that is helpful. It builds that camaraderie, that cohesiveness together. And then we chose activities that are outside, but they also force teamwork. To something that we're all used to in the military. So we do things like whitewater rafting, rock climbing. We'll do some horseback trail rides, things like that. So it's adventure sports. It's not the just very simple activity. It's adventure sports. Get them doing something active out in nature. But then we have the aspect of where we really do address the mental health aspect. It isn't a counseling session. There are no therapists or counselors there. It's simply peer led. So it's people that, they can trust, like, this person has gone through what I've gone through, or they've served in the military or as a first responder, so they get it. It's not a therapist or somebody that has no clue as to what service is like, and then we talk about things like, depression, anxiety, anger. That's a big one. Legacy. What does leaving a legacy look like? Those sorts of things. So, turning our tagline is turning pain into purpose. So we talk about that. What does that look like? And so every night we sit around a fire, which that again is proven with research to help people that have have gone through trauma with your brain, heals your brain. It opens people up to conversation. So we sit around a fire and we have a veteran or first responder leading this conversation, and no one's ever forced to talk, but inevitably, just naturally, people start opening up once you share your own personal story, your own personal struggles. So it allows them, if they're willing, to start opening up about things they're struggling with. So
Yeah, so you touched on some important ideas there, right? Because there's a difference between just outdoor activities and ecotherapy, or being intentional about how you're using those activities and what you're trying to give people to take away, and that peer-to-peer interaction. So are all your peer leaders, do they have training in leading peer groups like that?
they do. Yeah, we created a leadership training program. So we take folks that we have identified as having really strong leadership attributes, a huge heart, obviously, for others and giving
Mm-hmm.
back. We take them through a weekend-long training retreat. So they go through a program that we've put together from over the years, and so they understand how it is to lead these trips, how to help people that have gone through trauma, all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's great. And of course, I know. So having led retreats and things like that myself, um, that can, well, boy, it's interesting. They fill you up in so many ways. Being able to share those experiences with others and help other people grow and develop. I'm just typically just wiped out after an event like that, though. Too, can you talk about what you do personally to stay healthy? Because there's a ton of research on, well, as you talked about already, experiencing the outdoors, that physical fitness activities, and spiritual fitness, and other activities like that too. What kind of practices are part of your life now that help you stay mentally, emotionally, or spiritually fit and resilient so that you can invest yourself in others?
Yeah, that's a great question. Fitness has always been something that I've strived to be really good about.
Mm-hmm.
At times it's pretty difficult to be consistent in, but try to
Oh
stay
yeah.
consistent with exercise, eating healthily. And then, every day, every morning we'll do, read from the Bible with the family, whole family. So reading the scriptures, doing devotions just on my own or with my wife. Um, pretty try to be pretty active within our church, leading a small group and those kind of things, volunteering when we can. So being active within our church, I think, is extremely helpful. Very healing, at least for me, like physically going to our church and being in fellowship
Mm-hmm.
with others there. And then, yeah, for me, just I love getting outside. So, we're blessed with where we're at here in Southern Oregon to be able to, I can go 30 minutes to an hour in any direction and I'll be out in the middle of nowhere. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful places out here. So that's what I love to do. Whether by myself or with a family, we'll just go out to the woods somewhere and then just get away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I miss about living in Southern Oregon. From my house, I could walk out my front door and just start running, and in 10 minutes, I could be on some pretty epic trails.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that is,
great.
that is cool.
Yeah. Now you mentioned being part of a faith-based community, and there's a lot of research on that too. That some studies suggest that there's up to an 80% preventive and protective factor against harmful outcomes like suicide, uh, alcohol dependency, substance abuse, other harmful behaviors, just by having those spiritual disciplines or being connected to a faith based community. So no, I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So now the overarching theme for this show is living and leading with hope, and idea, well, that word has come up a couple times, and now it's not. Hope is, we can talk about hope even more broadly, not just in a spiritual or religious context, but I do believe that for most people, and that seeing someone who serves in the military or law enforcement, serving in the military or law enforcement is a very meaningful pursuit, a very meaningful vocation or calling, and that when other people see uniformed personnel or veterans, that it gives them hope.
Mm.
What what gives you hope? What makes you believe that a better tomorrow is possible, even on the darkest days?
Mm. I mean, in all honesty, I still struggle with things like depression, and I definitely get in those slumps of, where it just feels pretty dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle in those areas too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that's foreign to me. And even in those moments, calling out to the Lord, like, Lord, please help me out through this, and
Mm-hmm.
and it might be a while before I get through that moment. Um, I think it's knowing. I think one thing that has helped me a lot in those moments is taking me back to, when I was in the hospital, and then I saw folks like my friend Andrew I mentioned earlier, who's a triple amputee,
Mm-hmm.
or another friend of mine who is another triple amputee, but he lives his life incredibly. He's a Paralympic surfer and things like that. People that are paralyzed, blind, things like that. I think about how blessed that I am to be where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
That it could always be worse. Because I remember feeling sorry for myself, especially early on, where, like, man, this is so difficult. But then I look over and I see this guy who's paralyzed
Mm-hmm.
and can only move his head, and can barely talk or something like that. It's like, okay, I have no reason to complain. And that can always be worse. But God's given me an amazing life, amazing family, amazing opportunities, and I think those are things that I really try to force myself to think about when I'm in those moments of feeling hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
Is that God has blessed us in amazing ways, just being an American living
Mm-hmm.
here in this country. Um, I chose to stand on those yellow footprints. No one forced me. Um, and I think even in the darkest of days, like, there's so much beauty around us. We just have to be willing to, like, open our eyes a little bit more and be able to
Mm-hmm.
see it,
Mm-hmm.
which I know can be really difficult. And I've sat with people who are just in that dark place where everything looks gray, and it's really difficult. But just, yeah, I think just having a foundation in Christ, for one, is definitely necessary for everyone. Without him, you have nothing ultimately. So you have to have that foundation first and foremost.
Well, thank you for kind of showing that vulnerability, because, well, you touched on it with when you're talking about working out too, right? That consistency is hard to achieve, and I mean, our mental and spiritual health is really kind of similar. It's not like you achieve that level of fitness and you're good, you're there, right? We have to stay connected to others. We have to be parts of those communities that help us build those habits and build that capacity. So no, thank you for sharing that too. Yeah, I mean, as I've gotten older too, I think if there's a secret, is that there is no secret to physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, the health of our relationships, is that consistency is super important. Something's always better than nothing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
definitely right.
No, and yeah, thanks for sharing that, because it's, yeah, I mean, and when people meet you now, I'm sure they can just see you've got that very calming presence about you that I'm sure is a blessing to the people that you work with.
No, thank you.
Well, so Jed, what's next for you? What, and are you working on anything big?
I mean, next is just helping further develop this program. So we've got a trip coming up here next week. So we'll be out in Wyoming. I have a group of ladies that we're taking out, doing some rafting and rock climbing and horseback riding and all that good stuff. So I'm pretty excited about doing that. We've got 2 ladies that are leading that trip for me, and they're phenomenal. So really looking forward to seeing how their trip goes, and I think it's going to be awesome for them. But just further developing our program. Outreach is a big thing for us, so we don't want to just send people on their way and then never talk to them again. So we're constantly trying to, as long as they're willing to keep in contact with us, we want to keep in contact with them. So we're trying to just keep that going, and hopefully grow this program some more. But also just trying to be more involved with like our church's small group that we have here. Really trying to develop discipleship, people that are able to grow in their walk with Christ and be able to help lead others to Christ as well. So that's something we're trying to do. And then just, be a good husband, be a good dad.
That's phenomenal. And just to circle back to something you said earlier, we're always surrounded by opportunity, and I think your story very powerfully communicates to every day is a gift. Every day is a gift, and we are. If we just kind of look around, there are always opportunities to love and to serve the people around us.
Yeah, totally. That's great.
Well, Jed, I hope to be able to cross paths with you in person sometime soon. But hey, God bless you and your family and the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for spending all this time with us today.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much. And yeah, I hope we get to meet sometime soon. And just appreciate you having me on this podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure. All right, take care.
All right, God bless.
Yep, you too. This podcast is produced by the Oregon National Guard Public Affairs Office. My prayer for you is that wherever you find yourself, that you might find hope for today and strength for the ambiguity and chaos of life. Blessings on the rest of your day.